Tonight, we'll journey into the turbulent waters of the Caribbean to explore the legendary island of Tortuga, one of the most dangerous places in the early colonial world. Long before modern tourism transformed the Caribbean, Tortuga became a haven for pirates, privateers, smugglers, adventurers, and fugitives seeking fortune beyond the reach of empires. Perched off the coast of Hispaniola, this small island gained an outsized reputation as a stronghold of violence, rebellion, and maritime warfare. We'll follow the rise of the Buccaneers who turned Tortuga into their headquarters, examine the brutal realities of pirate life, uncover conflicts between European powers struggling for control of the Caribbean, and explore the legends that transformed Tortuga into one of history's most infamous pirate havens. Along the way, we'll discover how ordinary sailors became feared raiders, how colonial rivalries fueled chaos across the region, and why Tortuga's reputation spread across the Atlantic world. This History for Sleep journey combines historical research, maritime history, colonial exploration, piracy, and gentle storytelling designed to help you relax while traveling through one of the most dangerous chapters of Caribbean history. And before we begin, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Every story, every memory, and every place matters. And together we keep history alive. Now let's begin. Part 1. The Caribbean before Tortuga's rise. Discovery of the island. As the first light of dawn spreads across the Caribbean Sea and the calm waters reflect shades of gold, silver, and pale blue, it is difficult to imagine that this seemingly peaceful region would one day become one of the most contested and dangerous places on Earth. Long before Tortuga earned its reputation as a pirate stronghold, before buccaneers, privateers, and adventurers transformed it into a haven beyond the reach of empires, the Caribbean existed as a vast and interconnected world shaped by winds, currents, islands, and the lives of indigenous peoples who had navigated its waters for centuries. To understand the rise of Tortuga, we must first travel back to a time before the arrival of European ships, before maps labeled territories as possessions of distant kings, and before the struggle for wealth and power reshaped the region forever. Imagine standing on the shores of the Caribbean more than 500 years ago. The sea stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Dense tropical forests cover the islands. Rivers flow from mountainous interiors toward coral-fringed coastlines. Birds move through warm coastal breezes. The islands that would later become battlegrounds of empire are home to communities with deep knowledge of the environment and extensive networks connecting distant shores. The Taino people, whose ancestors had settled many islands throughout the Caribbean, lived within societies supported by agriculture, fishing, trade, and complex cultural traditions. Canoes traveled between islands carrying goods, information, and people. The sea served not as a barrier, but as a highway linking communities across the region. To those who lived here, the Caribbean was not a collection of isolated islands. It was a connected world shaped by movement and exchange. Everything began to change in 1492 when the expedition led by Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic and entered Caribbean waters. The arrival of Europeans initiated one of the most transformative periods in world history. For Spain, the Caribbean became the gateway to a vast new empire. Expeditions followed rapidly. Explorers mapped coastlines, claimed territories, and established settlements. Ships carried people, animals, plants, goods, and diseases between continents. The consequences were profound. Indigenous populations faced devastating epidemics, forced labor systems, and social disruption. At the same time, European powers began competing for influence and resources throughout the region. During the early decades of Spanish expansion, attention focused primarily on larger islands such as Hispaniola, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. These locations offered agricultural potential, strategic harbors, and access to emerging colonial networks. Smaller islands often received less attention. Among these was Tortuga, a rugged island located just north of Hispaniola. Viewed from a distance, Tortuga appeared modest compared to larger territories nearby. Its steep terrain, rocky coastline, and limited agricultural opportunities made it seem less attractive to colonial planners seeking immediate wealth. Yet geography would eventually transform these perceived disadvantages into strengths. The name Tortuga, derived from the Spanish word for turtle, reflected the island's shape as perceived by sailors approaching from the sea. Rising from Caribbean waters, the island presented a dramatic profile marked by cliffs, hills, and protected anchorages. Its position near the northern coast of Hispaniola placed it close to major maritime routes connecting Spanish colonies. At first, however, Tortuga remained largely peripheral to imperial ambitions. Spanish authorities focused resources elsewhere. Settlements remained limited. The island existed on the margins of colonial administration, known to sailors but rarely considered a priority. Yet history often unfolds in unexpected ways. Locations ignored by powerful institutions sometimes become important precisely because they lie beyond direct control. The Caribbean itself was undergoing rapid transformation. Spanish treasure fleets transported silver, gold, and valuable commodities across the Atlantic. Ports connected colonial economies to European markets. Merchant vessels crossed increasingly busy sea lanes. Wealth flowed through the region in unprecedented quantities. Such wealth attracted attention. Rival European powers watched Spain's growing empire with interest and concern. England, France, and the Netherlands sought opportunities to challenge Spanish dominance. Initially, their efforts involved exploration, trade, and limited colonization. Over time, competition intensified. The Caribbean became a theater of imperial rivalry where political conflicts, economic ambitions, and maritime warfare intersected. Geography played a central role in these developments. The Caribbean Sea contains hundreds of islands, channels, reefs, and coastal passages. Navigating these waters required skill and local knowledge. Winds and currents influenced travel routes. Harbors provided shelter from storms. Islands served as resupply points for ships crossing long distances. Control of strategic locations could influence regional trade and military operations. Even small islands possessed significance if positioned near important routes. Tortuga's location would eventually make it valuable to people operating outside conventional structures of authority. Its rugged landscape offered concealment. Its harbors provided access to nearby shipping lanes. Its relative isolation reduced oversight from colonial governments. These characteristics would later attract settlers, hunters, and adventurers seeking opportunities unavailable elsewhere. During the 16th century, the Caribbean experienced cycles of exploration, settlement, conflict, and adaptation. European diseases dramatically reduced indigenous populations. Colonial economies expanded. African slavery became increasingly central to plantation systems emerging across the region. Ships connected distant parts of the Atlantic world through networks of commerce and coercion. Yet many areas remained only loosely controlled. Communication across oceans was slow. Colonial authorities often struggled to enforce policies in remote locations. Frontiers emerged where official power weakened and local conditions shaped outcomes. Tortuga belonged to this frontier world. Sailors occasionally visited the island. Hunters explored nearby regions. Small groups established temporary camps. Yet no one could have predicted the role Tortuga would eventually play. The island remained a quiet outpost overlooking one of the busiest maritime regions in the world. Beyond its shores, empires competed for influence. Merchant fleets transported immense wealth. Colonial societies expanded across tropical landscapes. The stage was gradually being set for a transformation that would make Tortuga famous far beyond the Caribbean. As morning sunlight brightens the sea and warm breezes move across the island's hills, Tortuga appears calm and isolated. Yet beneath that tranquility lies potential. Geography, politics, economics, and circumstance are beginning to converge. The forces reshaping the Caribbean are creating opportunities for people willing to operate beyond the boundaries of established authority. In the years ahead, hunters, settlers, sailors, and outcasts will discover advantages hidden within this rugged island. What seems peripheral today will soon become central to one of the most extraordinary chapters in maritime history. The Caribbean is changing, and Tortuga is about to emerge from obscurity into legend. As the sun climbs higher above the Caribbean and light dances across turquoise waters stretching between countless islands, the story of Tortuga continues within a world increasingly defined by movement, opportunity, and conflict. The 16th and early 17th centuries transformed the Caribbean into one of the most dynamic regions on Earth. Ships crossed the sea carrying silver from the Americas, manufactured goods from Europe, and enslaved Africans forced into colonial labor systems. Ports expanded. Fortifications rose along strategic coastlines. Merchants pursued profit. Soldiers defended imperial interests. Yet beyond the reach of major cities and official institutions, a different world emerged. It was a frontier shaped by distance, uncertainty, and improvisation. Tortuga stood at the edge of that frontier. To appreciate why the island would become so important, imagine the experience of a sailor navigating Caribbean waters during this period. Weeks or months at sea could separate ports. Storms threatened ships with little warning. Food and fresh water required constant replenishment. Accurate maps remained limited. Harbors offering shelter and supplies were invaluable. Tortuga's position near Hispaniola placed it within reach of major shipping routes, while remaining somewhat removed from direct oversight. For individuals seeking independence from colonial authorities, this combination proved attractive. The island offered access without excessive control. At the same time, Spain's dominance faced growing challenges. Although the Spanish Empire possessed enormous wealth and extensive territories, maintaining control across such vast distances was difficult. Rival European powers recognized vulnerabilities within the system. English, French, and Dutch interests increasingly targeted Caribbean opportunities. Some activities operated openly through colonial ventures and trade. Others blurred distinctions between commerce, warfare, and piracy. Privateers received authorization to attack enemy shipping during periods of conflict. Smugglers bypassed official regulations. Settlers established communities in disputed regions. The Caribbean became a mosaic of competing interests rather than a uniformly controlled imperial space. Hispaniola, the large island south of Tortuga, played an especially important role. Spanish settlements concentrated in certain areas, but vast portions of the island remained sparsely governed. Over time, populations of wild cattle and pigs descended from animals introduced by Europeans spread across the landscape. These animals created opportunities for hunters. Individuals began traveling to remote areas to harvest meat and hides for passing ships. Smoking and preserving meat became an important economic activity. The techniques used by these hunters would contribute directly to the emergence of a group later known as Buccaneers, a term derived from the boucan, a wooden framework used for smoking meat. The hunters who frequented Hispaniola and nearby islands occupied a unique social position. Many lived beyond strict colonial supervision. Some were Europeans seeking opportunity. Others came from diverse backgrounds, shaped by migration, labor, and frontier conditions. Their livelihoods depended upon practical skills rather than official status. They understood local environments, navigated difficult terrain, and developed networks connecting coastal settlements, ships, and trading partners. Tortuga gradually attracted such individuals because it offered proximity to hunting grounds and relative freedom from regulation. The island's geography contributed significantly to its appeal. Steep cliffs protected portions of the coastline. Natural anchorages provided shelter for vessels. Elevated terrain offered defensive advantages. Unlike more developed colonies, Tortuga lacked extensive bureaucratic structures capable of enforcing strict control. Settlers could establish themselves with considerable autonomy. For people accustomed to frontier life, this independence held great value. The island became a place where social boundaries were more flexible than in established colonial centers. Meanwhile, maritime traffic through the Caribbean continued increasing. Treasure fleets sailed toward Europe carrying immense wealth extracted from the Americas. Merchant ships transported goods between colonies. Naval vessels patrolled strategic routes. Wherever valuable cargo moved, opportunities for interception existed. Initially, most residents of Tortuga focused on hunting, trade, and survival rather than piracy. Yet the economic geography of the region made maritime raiding increasingly tempting. Wealth passed nearby in extraordinary quantities. Imperial rivalries created political justifications for attacks against enemy shipping. Frontier communities often possessed few alternatives capable of generating comparable profits. The cultural environment of Tortuga reflected this complexity. People arrived from different regions and backgrounds. Languages mixed. Alliances formed according to practical needs rather than rigid national identities. Life required adaptability. Food, tools, weapons, and supplies often depended upon informal networks. Communities developed customs suited to frontier conditions. Cooperation could be essential for survival. At the same time, violence remained an ever-present possibility. Disputes over resources, trade, and territory occurred regularly throughout the Caribbean. Tortuga existed within this broader context of uncertainty. European governments struggled to define consistent policies toward frontier populations. Officials sometimes viewed settlers as useful buffers against rival powers. At other times, they regarded them as troublesome subjects difficult to control. Local realities frequently differed from imperial expectations. Communication delays meant that decisions made in Europe could take months to influence events in the Caribbean. By the time instructions arrived, circumstances had often changed. This gap between authority and practice created space for communities such as those emerging on Tortuga. As years passed, the island's reputation slowly expanded. Sailors learned that supplies could be obtained there. Hunters found opportunities nearby. Adventurers heard stories of a place where independence seemed possible. The population remained relatively small, yet its significance grew. Tortuga was becoming more than a remote island. It was evolving into a gathering point for people operating along the edges of empire. These individuals did not yet constitute the famous pirate society later associated with the island, but they established foundations upon which that society would emerge. Looking out across the Caribbean from Tortuga's rugged shores, one can sense the forces converging. Trade routes carry wealth through nearby waters. Rival empires compete for influence. Frontier communities develop beyond effective governmental control. Hunters, sailors, and settlers create networks linking sea and land. Geography provides protection while offering access to opportunity. The ingredients of future legend are assembling gradually. The island's transformation has begun, though its most famous chapter still lies ahead. Soon Tortuga will attract people whose ambitions extend beyond hunting and trade. The quiet frontier outpost will become something far more dangerous, and its name will spread across the Atlantic world as a symbol of freedom, risk, violence, and adventure. Part 2: Early Settlers and Hunters, the Birth of the Buccaneers. As the warm Caribbean sun rises above the horizon and illuminates the rugged coastline of Tortuga, the island appears peaceful. Waves roll gently against rocky shores. Seabirds circle overhead. Dense vegetation covers steep hills that rise above hidden coves and sheltered anchorages. Yet beneath this tranquil appearance, the foundations of one of history's most notorious frontier societies are beginning to form. During the early 17th century, long before Tortuga became synonymous with piracy, the island attracted a very different population. These were not yet the legendary sea raiders of popular imagination. They were hunters, settlers, laborers, adventurers, refugees, and opportunists drawn to a remote corner of the Caribbean where imperial authority remained weak and survival depended largely upon individual skill and determination. Their arrival marked the beginning of a transformation that would eventually make Tortuga famous throughout the Atlantic world. To understand the birth of the Buccaneers, we must first explore the lives of the men and women who occupied this frontier landscape before piracy emerged as the island's defining feature. The Caribbean of the early 17th century was a region in motion. European colonies expanded across islands and coastlines. Merchant vessels crossed the sea carrying goods between ports. Rival empires competed for influence, yet vast areas remained only loosely controlled. Hispaniola, the large island lying just south of Tortuga, contained extensive regions where Spanish authority was limited. In these less governed areas, populations of wild cattle and pigs thrived. Descended from animals introduced by Europeans decades earlier, these herds multiplied across forests, plains, and hills. To many settlers and sailors, they represented opportunity. Animal hides, meat, and tallow were valuable commodities. Ships needed provisions. Colonial settlements required supplies. A trade emerged centered upon hunting and processing these animals, and it was this trade that laid the groundwork for the buccaneer way of life. Imagine a hunter setting out before dawn into the interior of Hispaniola. The air is humid. Mist hangs among the trees. Carrying firearms, knives, and essential supplies, he moves through terrain rich with wildlife. Days may pass before returning to camp. Success depends upon tracking skills, patience, and knowledge of the environment. The work is demanding and often dangerous. Injuries, disease, storms, and accidents are constant risks. Yet for many individuals, hunting offered a degree of independence difficult to find elsewhere in the colonial world. Unlike plantation laborers or urban workers, hunters operated largely beyond direct supervision. Their livelihoods depended upon personal effort rather than formal institutions. The process of preparing meat for trade required specialized techniques. Fresh meat spoiled quickly in tropical climates, making preservation essential. Hunters developed methods involving smoking meat over wooden frameworks known as boucans. These structures allowed meat to dry slowly above controlled fires, producing provisions capable of lasting longer during transport. The French term boucan eventually gave rise to the word buccaneer. Initially, the term referred not to pirates, but to hunters who prepared meat using this method. Over time, however, the meaning evolved alongside the changing activities of the people associated with it. Life among these early hunters fostered a distinctive culture. Camps often consisted of simple shelters built from local materials. Resources were shared when necessary. Practical skills commanded respect. Hunting success, marksmanship, endurance, and environmental knowledge mattered more than social status. Many individuals came from modest backgrounds. Some had escaped difficult circumstances elsewhere. Others sought economic opportunities unavailable in established colonies. Together, they formed communities characterized by adaptability and resilience. The frontier environment encouraged cooperation while also rewarding independence. Tortuga gradually emerged as an important base within this world. The island's location near hunting grounds on Hispaniola made it convenient for storing supplies, trading goods, and seeking refuge. Its rugged terrain provided protection. Settlers established small communities along the coast. Temporary camps evolved into more permanent settlements. The population remained diverse. French influence grew particularly strong, though people from various backgrounds could be found on the island. What united many residents was not nationality, but a shared experience of life on the frontier. Food, trade, and survival shaped daily routines. Hunters supplied meat and hides to passing ships. Sailors exchanged goods unavailable locally. Tools, weapons, clothing, and other necessities circulated through informal networks. Economic activity often operated outside official regulations. Smuggling became common because frontier communities frequently lacked access to legal markets. Colonial authorities attempted to control trade, but enforcement proved difficult in remote regions. Residents adapted by developing flexible arrangements suited to local realities. Violence was never far away. Competition over resources, disputes between rival groups, and conflicts involving colonial powers created instability throughout the Caribbean. Hunters needed weapons not only for their work, but also for protection. Firearms became important tools of survival. Skill with muskets earned respect. Frontier life demanded readiness for unexpected challenges. Yet despite these hardships, many individuals preferred the relative freedom of places like Tortuga to the stricter social structures found elsewhere. The environment itself influenced the development of buccaneer culture. Tropical forests provided resources, but also concealed dangers. Hurricanes could devastate settlements. Disease posed constant threats. Isolation required self-reliance. Communities learned to adapt to local conditions through experience. Knowledge passed between individuals and across generations. Practical wisdom concerning weather, navigation, hunting, and resource management became essential components of daily life. As Tortuga's population increased, the island's reputation began spreading. Sailors heard stories of hunters living beyond the reach of governors and tax collectors. Adventurers seeking opportunity found the idea appealing. The island offered a degree of autonomy rare within the colonial Caribbean. While conditions were often harsh, the possibility of independence attracted newcomers. Gradually, Tortuga evolved from a little-known outpost into a recognizable frontier settlement. Looking across the island during these early years, one would not yet see the pirate haven immortalized in later legends. Instead, the landscape contained hunters smoking meat, settlers constructing shelters, traders negotiating exchanges, and small communities striving to survive in a challenging environment. Yet within these activities lay the origins of something larger. The skills developed by hunters, marksmanship, navigation, cooperation, and self-reliance, would later prove valuable in very different pursuits. The networks connecting Tortuga to ships and distant markets would expand. The frontier culture taking shape would adapt to changing opportunities. The birth of the Buccaneers had begun, though their future role in Caribbean history remained unseen. As afternoon sunlight spreads across Tortuga and warm winds move through the palms overlooking the harbor, the island continues its gradual transformation from remote frontier settlement into a gathering place for a unique and increasingly influential population. The hunters who first arrived seeking wild cattle and pigs did not realize they were participating in the creation of a culture that would eventually become famous throughout the world. Yet the conditions of frontier life encouraged the development of habits, relationships, and skills that set the Buccaneers apart from ordinary colonists. Over time, these characteristics would shape both the identity of the island and the future of Caribbean maritime history. To understand the evolution of the Buccaneers, imagine spending several weeks among one of their communities. Life revolves around practical necessities. Food must be obtained, weapons maintained, shelters repaired, supplies acquired through trade. Unlike residents of larger colonial settlements, Buccaneers cannot rely upon extensive infrastructure or governmental support. Every task requires effort. Water must be collected. Fires must be maintained. Hunting expeditions demand careful planning. The environment rewards competence and punishes carelessness. As a result, reputation becomes closely linked to ability. Individuals earn respect through actions rather than titles. Many Buccaneers formed close partnerships known for their mutual support. Living in isolated conditions encouraged cooperation. Two hunters might share resources, divide responsibilities, and assist one another during difficult periods. Such arrangements provided practical benefits in an environment where illness, injury, or equipment failure could quickly become life-threatening. These partnerships also contributed to a broader culture emphasizing loyalty among equals. Although conflicts certainly occurred, the frontier encouraged relationships based upon shared experience rather than rigid social hierarchy. The economy of Tortuga remained closely connected to maritime activity. Ships arriving in nearby waters required provisions. Smoked meat, hides, and other goods produced by Buccaneers found ready markets. Captains appreciated reliable sources of supplies. Traders recognized opportunities for profit. Informal commercial networks linked Tortuga to settlements throughout the Caribbean. Because official regulations often restricted trade, smuggling became commonplace. Residents learned how to navigate the complex realities of colonial commerce, operating within spaces where legality and practicality frequently diverged. This environment attracted a diverse population. Some newcomers arrived voluntarily seeking opportunity. Others came after escaping difficult circumstances elsewhere. Indentured servants who had completed contracts sometimes moved to frontier regions in search of independence. Sailors dissatisfied with life aboard merchant vessels sought alternatives. Individuals displaced by wars, economic hardship, or political instability found refuge on the island. Tortuga's population therefore reflected a wide range of backgrounds and experiences. Diversity became one of its defining characteristics. The relationship between Buccaneers and colonial authorities remained complicated. Governments occasionally viewed frontier hunters as useful providers of supplies and defenders against rival powers. At other times, officials regarded them as troublesome and difficult to control. Policies shifted according to circumstances. Local realities often differed from instructions issued in distant capitals. The gap between official expectations and frontier practice created opportunities for Buccaneers to maintain considerable autonomy. As years passed, some hunters began supplementing their incomes through maritime ventures. Small boats allowed travel between islands. Knowledge of coastal waters proved valuable. Encounters with merchant ships became more frequent. The line separating hunter, trader, sailor, and occasional raider was not always clear. Economic opportunities encouraged experimentation. Individuals accustomed to independence looked for ways to increase profits. Maritime activity offered possibilities unavailable through hunting alone. The Caribbean itself encouraged such transitions. Vast wealth moved through regional shipping networks. Merchant vessels carried valuable cargoes. Imperial conflicts periodically disrupted trade. Privateering commissions authorized attacks against enemy shipping during wartime. Frontier populations often participated in these activities. For buccaneers, maritime ventures represented a logical extension of skills already possessed. Marksmanship, navigation, teamwork, and adaptability translated effectively from land to sea. Yet daily life on Tortuga remained grounded in ordinary realities. Hunters still tracked animals through forests. Traders negotiated exchanges along waterfronts. Settlers cultivated small plots of land. Communities gathered to share news and celebrate rare moments of leisure. The island's growth occurred gradually rather than suddenly. Buildings increased in number. Harbors became busier. Social networks expanded. What had once been a marginal outpost slowly developed into a recognizable settlement with its own customs and identity. Stories played an important role in shaping reputation. Sailors visiting Tortuga carried tales to other ports. Some accounts emphasized opportunity and freedom. Others highlighted danger and lawlessness. Both contained elements of truth. The island offered possibilities unavailable elsewhere, but life remained uncertain. Success required courage, skill, and luck. These qualities contributed to the growing mystique surrounding the Buccaneers. Their independence fascinated observers living within more structured societies. Environmental challenges continued influencing behavior. Hurricanes periodically threatened settlements. Droughts affected resources. Disease remained a persistent concern. Communities adapted through experience. Knowledge of local conditions became a valuable form of expertise. New arrivals often depended upon established residents for guidance. In this way, frontier culture reproduced itself across generations of settlers and adventurers. By the middle decades of the 17th century, Tortuga had become something more than a simple hunting outpost. The island served as a crossroads where different worlds intersected. European imperial ambitions, frontier economies, maritime trade, and individual aspirations all converged within its harbors and settlements. The Buccaneers stood at the center of this convergence. They were neither conventional colonists nor outright pirates, though elements of both identities would eventually influence their future development. Looking across Tortuga as evening approaches, one can observe the foundations of a society unlike any other in the Caribbean. Hunters return from expeditions carrying supplies. Ships anchor in sheltered waters. Traders exchange goods along the waterfront. Conversations occur in multiple languages. News travels from distant colonies. Opportunities emerge alongside dangers. The island exists within a zone where official authority remains limited and personal initiative carries great importance. Most importantly, the culture of the Buccaneers continues evolving. Economic pressures, imperial rivalries, and maritime opportunities are gradually pushing some residents toward new activities. The skills learned in forests and hunting camps will soon be applied in different contexts. The independence cherished by frontier settlers will encourage resistance to outside control. The networks connecting Tortuga to the wider Caribbean will expand dramatically. What began as a community of hunters preparing smoked meat on wooden boucans is moving toward a future that will make the island infamous. The birth of the Buccaneers is nearly complete. Soon, the world beyond Tortuga will begin paying closer attention to this small island at the edge of empire, and the next chapter in its history will transform it into one of the most feared and legendary places in the Caribbean. Part 3. Why Tortuga became a refuge. Life beyond the reach of empires. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the Caribbean horizon and warm golden light spreads across the rugged cliffs of Tortuga, the island appears almost peaceful. The sea glitters beneath the afternoon sky. Small vessels drift at anchor in protected coves. Smoke rises from cooking fires near simple settlements built along the shoreline. Yet beneath this tranquil scene lies a reality that made Tortuga unlike almost any other place in the 17th century Atlantic world. While kings, governors, merchants, and military commanders attempted to impose order across expanding colonial empires, Tortuga evolved into something very different. It became a refuge, not a refuge in the modern sense of safety and comfort, but a refuge from authority itself. People arrived on the island because they wished to escape something. Some fled poverty. Others sought freedom from restrictive laws, harsh employers, military obligations, debt, or political turmoil. A few came simply because they believed opportunities existed beyond the reach of governments. Together, these individuals transformed Tortuga into a frontier society where traditional structures of control were weaker than elsewhere, and where personal initiative often mattered more than official status. Understanding why Tortuga became such a refuge requires examining both the island itself and the broader world surrounding it. Throughout the 17th century, European empires expanded rapidly across the Caribbean and the Americas. Colonial administrators attempted to regulate trade, collect taxes, distribute land, enforce religious conformity, and maintain political authority. On paper, these systems appeared impressive. Maps divided territories into jurisdictions. Laws defined acceptable behavior. Officials represented distant monarchs. Yet reality often differed dramatically from theory. The Caribbean contained countless islands, remote coastlines, hidden coves, and sparsely populated regions where governmental control remained limited. Communication between Europe and the colonies required months. Instructions issued in Madrid, Paris, London, or Amsterdam often arrived long after circumstances had changed. Local officials frequently lacked sufficient resources to enforce policies effectively. Frontier regions emerged where authority existed more in principle than practice. Tortuga benefited from precisely this situation. Its rugged geography discouraged large-scale settlement during the early stages of colonization. Steep hills, rocky terrain, and limited agricultural potential reduced its appeal compared to richer islands. Yet these same characteristics made the island difficult to dominate. Natural defenses protected certain harbors. Elevated terrain offered strategic advantages. The island's proximity to Hispaniola provided access to resources while allowing residents to remain somewhat removed from major colonial centers. Geography created opportunities for independence. Imagine arriving on Tortuga after weeks at sea. Perhaps you are a sailor dissatisfied with life aboard merchant ships. Perhaps you are an indentured servant who has completed a contract and seeks a new beginning. Perhaps you are a hunter, trader, or adventurer searching for opportunity. The island offers something increasingly rare within the colonial world: flexibility. Social hierarchies exist, but they are less rigid than in established settlements. Land may be available. Trade occurs through informal networks. People judge one another more by practical abilities than by ancestry or title. Survival requires competence. In such an environment, individuals can reinvent themselves. This possibility attracted diverse populations. French settlers became especially influential, but Tortuga welcomed people from many backgrounds. Europeans, free people of mixed ancestry, escaped laborers, sailors, hunters, and merchants all contributed to the island's development. Some arrived legally, others did not. What mattered was less how one reached Tortuga and more whether one could adapt to life there. The island functioned as a frontier where identity remained fluid. Someone marginalized elsewhere might find acceptance if capable of contributing to the community. Economic factors also played a crucial role. Official colonial trade systems often restricted who could buy, sell, or transport goods. Governments attempted to channel commerce through approved ports and licensed merchants. Frontier populations viewed such regulations as obstacles rather than protections. Tortuga's residents frequently relied upon smuggling and informal exchange because these methods proved more practical. Ships arriving at the island could obtain supplies, repair equipment, and conduct business without extensive bureaucratic oversight. The resulting economy operated within a gray area between legality and illegality. For many participants, survival mattered more than compliance with distant regulations. The island's growing reputation spread through maritime networks. Sailors carried stories from port to port. Some described Tortuga as a place of freedom. Others emphasized danger. Both descriptions contained truth. Life on the island offered opportunities unavailable elsewhere, but it also involved significant risks. Violence remained common throughout the Caribbean. Rival groups competed for resources. Imperial conflicts spilled into frontier regions. Disease, storms, and accidents posed constant threats. Tortuga did not eliminate hardship. Instead, it offered an alternative to other forms of hardship experienced elsewhere. One of the most important characteristics of frontier societies is their ability to absorb people who do not fit comfortably within established systems. Tortuga excelled in this regard. Individuals who struggled to find opportunities in traditional colonial settings often discovered new possibilities on the island. Hunters joined established camps. Sailors found employment aboard vessels. Traders connected with informal commercial networks. Communities developed mechanisms for integrating newcomers because population growth strengthened the settlement as a whole. Every skilled individual represented a potential asset. The culture emerging on Tortuga reflected these realities. Independence became highly valued. Residents often distrusted excessive authority. Cooperation occurred when beneficial, but personal autonomy remained important. Practical knowledge commanded respect. Navigation, hunting, marksmanship, carpentry, ship maintenance, and trade skills all carried significance. Frontier conditions rewarded adaptability. Those unable to adjust frequently departed or failed. Those who succeeded helped shape a distinctive social environment unlike that found in more regulated colonies. As afternoon light softens and long shadows stretch across the harbor, Tortuga's role as a refuge becomes increasingly clear. The island occupies a unique position within the Caribbean. It stands close enough to major trade routes to benefit from economic activity while remaining distant enough to avoid full incorporation into imperial systems. Its residents exploit this balance effectively. They participate in regional networks without submitting completely to external control. In doing so, they create a community defined not by allegiance to a particular empire, but by shared experiences of frontier life. What makes Tortuga remarkable is not merely that people sought refuge there. Frontier settlements throughout history have attracted individuals seeking new beginnings. Tortuga's significance lies in the scale and consequences of this process. The island is becoming a gathering point for precisely the kinds of people most likely to challenge established authority. Hunters, sailors, smugglers, adventurers, and opportunists are assembling in one location. Their skills complement one another. Their networks expand. Their ambitions grow. The refuge taking shape on Tortuga will soon influence events far beyond its shores. As evening settles across Tortuga and the Caribbean Sea reflects the deep orange colors of the setting sun, the island's transformation into a refuge reaches a new stage. What began as a remote outpost occupied by hunters and scattered settlers is evolving into a society whose reputation extends across the Atlantic world. The reasons people come to Tortuga are varied, yet a common theme connects many of them: the search for opportunity beyond the limits imposed by powerful institutions. In a century marked by expanding empires, strict social hierarchies, and increasingly regulated economies, Tortuga offers an alternative. It is not a utopia. Life remains difficult, dangerous, and uncertain. Yet compared to many other places, the island provides a remarkable degree of freedom. That freedom, combined with strategic geography and growing economic importance, explains why Tortuga becomes one of the most famous refuges of its age. Imagine walking through one of Tortuga's settlements as dusk approaches. The harbor is busy. Small boats move between anchored ships and the shore. Traders negotiate exchanges. Hunters return from expeditions. Sailors share stories gathered from distant ports. Languages intermingle. News travels rapidly. Information about shipping routes, political developments, market conditions, and regional conflicts circulates through conversations occurring in taverns, warehouses, and along waterfronts. The island functions as an information hub connecting diverse parts of the Caribbean. People who arrive seeking opportunity quickly discover that knowledge itself can be valuable. This exchange of information contributes to Tortuga's appeal. In established colonies, authorities often attempt to regulate communication and commerce. Frontier settlements operate differently. Networks develop organically. Personal relationships matter. Trust is built through repeated interaction rather than official certification. Someone with useful information can gain influence regardless of social background. This dynamic attracts ambitious individuals eager to improve their circumstances. The island's economy continues diversifying as well. Hunting remains important, but other activities expand. Ship repair, provisioning, small-scale agriculture, trade, and maritime services all contribute to local prosperity. Tortuga's harbor becomes increasingly valuable because vessels require places to obtain supplies and conduct business. The island's residents learn how to meet these needs. Economic flexibility encourages growth. Unlike plantation colonies dependent upon a single commodity, Tortuga supports a range of activities adapted to frontier conditions. At the same time, imperial rivalries intensify throughout the Caribbean. Spain's dominance faces growing challenges from France, England, and the Netherlands. Wars in Europe influence events across the Atlantic. Privateers receive commissions authorizing attacks against enemy shipping. Colonial officials seek allies capable of defending frontier interests. In this environment, the distinction between legitimate commerce and organized violence becomes increasingly blurred. Tortuga's residents occupy a position uniquely suited to exploit these ambiguities. Many individuals living on the island possess maritime experience. Sailors understand navigation and ship handling. Hunters are skilled marksmen. Traders maintain regional contacts. Together, these capabilities create a population capable of adapting quickly to changing opportunities. When circumstances favor peaceful commerce, residents engage in trade. When conflicts create openings for privateering, some pursue maritime ventures. Flexibility becomes one of the community's greatest strengths. The social atmosphere of Tortuga reinforces this adaptability. Traditional hierarchies remain weaker than in many colonies. Wealth and influence certainly matter, but practical ability often carries equal importance. A successful captain, skilled hunter, or experienced trader can achieve status through accomplishment rather than birth. Such opportunities attract people frustrated by more rigid systems elsewhere. The island becomes a magnet for talent as well as ambition. Yet life on Tortuga should not be romanticized. Conditions remain challenging. Housing is often basic. Disease can spread rapidly. Hurricanes threaten settlements and ships alike. Medical care is limited. Violence occurs regularly. The absence of strong governmental control means residents must often rely upon themselves and their communities for protection. Freedom comes with costs. Individuals seeking refuge on Tortuga exchange one set of constraints for another. They gain autonomy, but assume greater responsibility for their own survival. Despite these difficulties, the island's reputation continues growing. Stories circulate throughout ports from Europe to the Americas. Some accounts exaggerate opportunities. Others emphasize dangers. Both contribute to the mythology surrounding Tortuga. Sailors imagine a place where fortunes can be made. Authorities worry about a settlement increasingly difficult to control. Adventurers view the island as a gateway to possibilities unavailable elsewhere. Reputation itself becomes a powerful force attracting additional newcomers. The cultural diversity of Tortuga also contributes to its distinct character. Residents arrive from different regions, bringing varied customs, languages, and experiences. Frontier conditions encourage interaction across boundaries that might remain more rigid elsewhere. Shared challenges foster cooperation. Communities develop hybrid traditions reflecting multiple influences. This cultural flexibility helps the island adapt to changing circumstances while strengthening its identity as a place apart from conventional colonial society. As darkness approaches and lanterns begin appearing along the waterfront, one can sense that Tortuga stands at a crossroads. The island has already become a refuge, but its future significance will extend far beyond providing shelter for settlers and hunters. The very qualities that attract newcomers, strategic location, weak oversight, economic flexibility, maritime expertise, and a culture valuing independence, are creating conditions for something larger. The population now includes many individuals capable of operating effectively at sea. Trade routes carrying immense wealth pass nearby. Imperial conflicts provide justification for maritime attacks. Opportunities are emerging that will transform both the island and the people who inhabit it. Looking out across the harbor under the first stars of evening, ships rest quietly at anchor. Hunters prepare meals. Sailors exchange stories. Traders count profits. Life appears ordinary. Yet beneath the surface, powerful forces are gathering momentum. Tortuga's role as a refuge has brought together exactly the kinds of people who thrive in uncertain environments. They possess the skills, experience, and ambitions necessary to take advantage of opportunities others might avoid. In the years ahead, these opportunities will reshape the island dramatically. The refuge beyond the reach of empires will become something more influential and far more feared. Hunters will become raiders. Traders will support maritime expeditions. Sailors will pursue fortunes on dangerous waters. Tortuga's name will spread across oceans as stories of its inhabitants reach every major port in the Atlantic world. The island at the edge of empire is no longer merely a place of refuge. It is becoming the heart of a new and unpredictable frontier society. And soon, that society will transform Tortuga into the most notorious pirate stronghold in the Caribbean. Part 4. The Rise of the Buccaneer Brotherhood, Tortuga's Growing Reputation. As dawn breaks over Tortuga and the first rays of sunlight illuminate the island's steep cliffs and sheltered harbors, the world surrounding it is changing rapidly. The quiet frontier refuge that once attracted hunters, traders, and settlers is beginning to evolve into something far more powerful and far more dangerous. Throughout the 17th century, the Caribbean became one of the most fiercely contested regions on Earth. Merchant fleets crossed its waters carrying silver from the mines of the Americas, sugar from expanding plantations, tobacco, dyes, hides, and countless other valuable goods. European empires competed relentlessly for influence. Wars fought in Europe echoed across distant oceans. Colonial governors struggled to maintain authority. Amid this instability, the Buccaneers of Tortuga discovered that their skills could be applied not only to hunting wild cattle in the forests of Hispaniola, but also to pursuing wealth at sea. What emerged was not a formal organization with written laws and official membership. Instead, it was a loose brotherhood bound together by shared experiences, practical cooperation, and a willingness to operate beyond conventional limits. This brotherhood would transform Tortuga from a remote island refuge into one of the most famous maritime strongholds in history. Imagine standing in Tortuga's harbor during these years of transition. The waterfront is far busier than it was only a generation earlier. Ships arrive from different corners of the Caribbean. Small vessels crowd anchorages once occupied by only a handful of boats. Sailors carry supplies ashore. Merchants negotiate exchanges. News travels rapidly from one ship to another. Information regarding shipping routes, military movements, weather conditions, and economic opportunities circulates constantly. The island functions as a hub within a growing network of maritime activity. For ambitious individuals, this environment creates possibilities that extend far beyond traditional frontier occupations. The transformation begins gradually. Many buccaneers still rely upon hunting and trade. Yet maritime ventures become increasingly attractive. Wealth passes through nearby waters in astonishing quantities. Spanish treasure fleets transport silver and gold destined for Europe. Merchant vessels carry valuable cargoes between colonies. Even a single successful interception can yield profits far exceeding those available through months of hunting. Such opportunities are difficult to ignore. Men accustomed to hardship and risk recognize the potential rewards. Imperial rivalries encourage this shift. Spain remains the dominant colonial power in much of the Caribbean, but its rivals are eager to challenge that dominance. France, England, and the Netherlands frequently find themselves in conflict with Spanish interests. During periods of war, governments issue privateering commissions authorizing captains to attack enemy shipping. These commissions blur the distinction between lawful warfare and piracy. A privateer operating under official authorization may appear little different from a pirate to those whose ships are targeted. For the Buccaneers of Tortuga, privateering provides both economic opportunity and political legitimacy. Raiding enemy vessels becomes not merely profitable, but officially sanctioned under certain circumstances. The skills developed during years of frontier life prove remarkably useful at sea. Buccaneers are experienced hunters accustomed to tracking targets, enduring difficult conditions, and working in small cooperative groups. Many possess excellent marksmanship. Others bring sailing experience gained through merchant service or coastal trade. Together, these abilities create effective maritime crews. Unlike the disciplined naval forces of major empires, buccaneer expeditions often operate with flexibility and independence. Decisions are influenced by practical considerations rather than strict military hierarchy. Leadership depends heavily upon competence and reputation. Life aboard a buccaneer vessel differs significantly from life within conventional colonial society. Crews frequently establish agreements governing the distribution of profits, responsibilities, and compensation for injuries. While not democratic in a modern sense, these arrangements often provide greater participation than many sailors experience elsewhere. Success depends upon cooperation. Every crew member contributes to the expedition's outcome. As a result, practical equality carries value. The frontier culture of Tortuga, which emphasizes ability over ancestry, adapts naturally to maritime operations. Tortuga's strategic location enhances its importance. Ships departing the island can access major trade routes with relative ease. Nearby coastlines offer concealment and resupply opportunities. The harbor provides a secure base where crews can prepare expeditions, repair vessels, and dispose of captured goods. Geography that once benefited hunters now supports maritime raiders. The island becomes a launching point for operations extending across the Caribbean. As successful expeditions return, Tortuga's reputation grows. Wealth circulates through the settlement. New arrivals seek opportunities to join maritime ventures. Taverns and marketplaces become gathering places where stories of daring raids spread rapidly. Some accounts are undoubtedly exaggerated. Others are grounded in reality. Together, they contribute to a growing mythology surrounding the island. Tortuga begins attracting not only practical men seeking employment, but also adventurers drawn by tales of fortune and freedom. The population becomes increasingly diverse. Former sailors, escaped servants, soldiers, traders, and opportunists from multiple nations converge upon the island. Shared interests often matter more than national identities. Cooperation emerges through necessity. Crews assemble according to opportunity rather than strict political allegiance. This flexibility allows the buccaneer community to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. It also complicates efforts by colonial authorities to impose control. Governments view these developments with mixed feelings. Colonial officials sometimes welcome buccaneers as defenders against rival powers. Their ships can supplement limited military resources. Their attacks weaken enemy commerce. Yet the same independence that makes buccaneers useful also makes them difficult to regulate. Individuals accustomed to operating beyond conventional authority rarely accept restrictions willingly. Tensions emerge between local needs and imperial objectives. Tortuga increasingly occupies an ambiguous position within the Caribbean world. As the morning sun rises higher above the harbor and ships prepare to depart on new voyages, the rise of the Buccaneer Brotherhood becomes unmistakable. What began as a community of hunters and frontier settlers has evolved into a maritime society capable of influencing regional events. Economic opportunity, imperial rivalry, geographic advantage, and cultural adaptation have combined to create something unprecedented. Tortuga is no longer merely a refuge. It is becoming a center of power in its own right. The transformation remains incomplete, but the direction is clear. The Brotherhood growing on the island will soon expand its activities across the Caribbean. Its members will become both celebrated and feared. Their exploits will inspire stories repeated in ports throughout the Atlantic world. Most importantly, they will help transform Tortuga's name into a symbol recognized far beyond the Caribbean Sea. The island's growing reputation is only beginning, and its most famous years still lie ahead. As the afternoon sun casts bright reflections across the harbor and warm Caribbean winds fill the sails of departing vessels, Tortuga enters a new era. The island's growing reputation now extends far beyond nearby waters. Sailors in distant ports speak of it. Merchants monitor activities there with concern. Colonial governors discuss its influence in official correspondence. What was once a remote frontier settlement has become a symbol of opportunity, danger, and defiance. The rise of the Buccaneer Brotherhood is no longer a local phenomenon. It is reshaping the balance of power throughout the Caribbean. To understand why Tortuga became so famous, imagine the perspective of a young sailor arriving on the island for the first time. Perhaps he has spent years serving aboard merchant vessels under strict discipline. Perhaps he has endured difficult conditions, low wages, and limited prospects for advancement. Upon reaching Tortuga, he encounters a very different environment. The harbor is crowded with ships representing diverse backgrounds. Taverns buzz with conversations about recent expeditions. Captains recruit crews for new ventures. Stories circulate regarding fortunes won through successful raids. Compared to the rigid structures of many colonial institutions, the island appears full of possibility. This perception proves enormously attractive. Throughout history, frontier societies have drawn individuals seeking alternatives to established systems. Tortuga amplifies this pattern. Its economy increasingly revolves around maritime activity. Opportunities exist for sailors, shipwrights, traders, navigators, and skilled craftsmen. Success is never guaranteed, but the possibility of rapid advancement exists in ways uncommon elsewhere. A capable individual can earn influence through achievement rather than birth or social status. The brotherhood that emerges among the Buccaneers is built upon shared experience rather than formal organization. Members come from different nations and backgrounds. Some are French, others are English, Dutch, or from various colonial territories. Many have little interest in the political disputes that occupy European courts. What matters more are practical concerns: securing supplies, finding profitable ventures, maintaining crews, and surviving dangerous voyages. Cooperation often transcends national boundaries. Alliances form according to opportunity. Tortuga's taverns play an important role within this world. More than places for recreation, they function as informal centers of communication and recruitment. Captains seek crew members. Merchants gather information. Sailors exchange news from distant regions. Rumors regarding vulnerable shipping routes spread quickly. Deals are negotiated over meals and drinks. The social life of the harbor contributes directly to the island's maritime economy. Information becomes a valuable commodity, and those able to obtain accurate intelligence gain significant advantages. As the reputation of Tortuga grows, so too does the scale of buccaneer operations. Early expeditions often involve small vessels targeting isolated ships or coastal settlements. Success encourages greater ambition. Crews acquire larger ships. Multiple vessels cooperate during complex operations. Experienced leaders emerge whose names become known throughout the Caribbean. Some achieve considerable fame through daring exploits. Others earn reputations for strategic skill or personal courage. Their stories spread through maritime networks, reinforcing the island's image as a center of adventure. The economic impact is substantial. Captured goods enter local markets. Traders profit from increased activity. Ship repair services expand. Suppliers benefit from growing demand. Wealth circulates through the settlement, attracting additional residents and visitors. Tortuga's prosperity becomes closely linked to maritime ventures. The island's fortunes rise alongside those of the Buccaneers who call it home. Yet prosperity brings challenges. Colonial authorities grow increasingly concerned about the island's independence. While buccaneers may prove useful during conflicts with rival powers, their activities are difficult to control. Privateering commissions provide legal justification for certain attacks, but the line separating privateering from piracy remains blurry. A captain authorized to target enemy shipping may not always distinguish carefully between legitimate and illegitimate opportunities. Local realities often diverge from official policies. Governments struggle to balance the benefits of buccaneer activity against the risks it creates. The island's defensive advantages contribute to its resilience. Tortuga's geography makes direct intervention difficult. Harbors can be protected. Approaches are known to local sailors. Residents possess extensive knowledge of surrounding waters. Any attempt to impose control requires resources that colonial authorities do not always possess. As a result, the island retains a considerable degree of autonomy despite increasing external attention. Life for ordinary residents remains complex. Not everyone participates directly in maritime expeditions. Many work in supporting roles. Craftsmen repair ships. Traders manage supplies. Farmers and hunters contribute food. Families establish homes within the growing settlement. The island develops a social fabric extending beyond its most famous inhabitants. Yet, even those not involved in raiding are influenced by the opportunities and dangers associated with the buccaneer economy. Stories and legends begin accumulating rapidly. Successful captains become larger-than-life figures in popular imagination. Accounts of daring escapes, fierce battles, hidden coves, and captured treasure circulate from port to port. Some stories contain kernels of truth. Others grow through repeated retelling. Together, they create a mythology that enhances Tortuga's reputation. The island becomes synonymous with adventure in ways few places ever achieve. As afternoon gradually transitions toward evening and shadows lengthen across the harbor, it becomes clear that Tortuga has undergone a remarkable transformation. The refuge once occupied primarily by hunters and settlers is now a thriving maritime center. Its residents participate in networks extending across the Caribbean and beyond. The Brotherhood of Buccaneers has evolved into a powerful force capable of influencing trade, warfare, and politics. Most importantly, the island's reputation continues expanding. Sailors dream of reaching it. Merchants fear its influence. Governors worry about its independence. Rival powers attempt to harness its potential. Tortuga occupies a unique position within the 17th century Atlantic world, simultaneously connected to empires and resistant to their control. Part 4: Raids, Privateers, and Caribbean Warfare, the most dangerous waters in the world. As dawn spreads across the Caribbean Sea and sunlight glitters upon endless stretches of blue water, it is easy to forget that these peaceful-looking waters were once among the most dangerous on Earth. During the 17th century, the Caribbean became a vast arena of conflict where empires competed for wealth, influence, and survival. Merchant ships carried fortunes across the sea. Treasure fleets transported silver mined in the Americas toward Europe. Colonial settlements produced sugar, tobacco, indigo, cacao, and countless other valuable commodities. Wherever wealth moved, violence followed close behind. The rise of Tortuga and its buccaneers occurred within this larger world of maritime warfare, privateering, and imperial rivalry. The island's reputation was built not merely upon independence or frontier culture, but upon its connection to a sea increasingly defined by risk. For sailors, merchants, governors, and ordinary colonists alike, the Caribbean became a place where fortunes could be won or lost in a single encounter. And at the center of many of these stories stood the men who sailed from Tortuga. Imagine standing on the deck of a merchant vessel crossing Caribbean waters during this era. The weather may be calm. Trade winds fill the sails. The horizon appears empty, yet danger is never far away. Somewhere beyond sight, privateers patrol shipping routes. Buccaneer vessels wait near islands and coastal passages. Naval squadrons search for enemy ships. Information travels slowly, making it difficult to know which regions are safe and which have become active war zones. Every sail appearing on the horizon generates uncertainty. Is it a merchant ship, a naval vessel, a privateer, or a pirate? Decisions must be made quickly, often with incomplete information. The distinction between privateering and piracy remains one of the defining features of Caribbean maritime history. Privateers operated under commissions issued by governments or colonial authorities. These documents authorized attacks against the ships and property of enemy nations during periods of conflict. From the perspective of the issuing government, privateers served as useful tools. They disrupted enemy commerce without requiring the expense of maintaining large naval forces. Successful privateers could capture valuable cargoes while weakening rival powers. Yet to those targeted, the difference between a privateer and a pirate often seemed insignificant. Both seized ships. Both captured goods. Both relied upon force. The legality of an attack frequently depended upon political circumstances rather than practical realities. Tortuga's buccaneers embraced privateering enthusiastically. Commissions provided opportunities to pursue wealth while maintaining at least a degree of legitimacy. Colonial governors sometimes encouraged such activities because they benefited local economies and advanced strategic objectives. Captured goods could be sold. Wealth flowed into settlements. Successful expeditions enhanced regional influence. As a result, buccaneers often found themselves operating in a gray zone where official approval and independent ambition overlapped. The geography of the Caribbean contributed significantly to the dangers of maritime travel. Hundreds of islands, reefs, channels, and hidden anchorages created a complex environment ideally suited for interception and surprise. Experienced captains understood how to use geography to their advantage. Narrow passages forced ships into predictable routes. Islands provided concealment. Coastal waters offered opportunities for resupply and escape. Buccaneers familiar with regional conditions could exploit these advantages effectively. Tortuga's location near important shipping lanes made it an ideal base for such operations. Many raids began with careful planning rather than impulsive aggression. Intelligence played a crucial role. Information regarding shipping schedules, cargoes, defenses, and routes could determine success or failure. Buccaneers gathered news from merchants, sailors, local residents, and informal networks extending across the Caribbean. Taverns, marketplaces, and waterfronts became centers of information exchange. A captain possessing accurate intelligence held a significant advantage over opponents relying upon guesswork. When an expedition departed Tortuga, preparation was essential. Supplies had to be secured, weapons inspected, crews assembled, agreements regarding profit distribution confirmed. Once at sea, discipline and cooperation became critical. Contrary to later romantic portrayals, successful buccaneer operations required organization. Navigation demanded expertise. Combat required coordination. Survival depended upon collective effort. The frontier culture that had developed on Tortuga translated effectively into maritime environments because it emphasized practical competence and adaptability. The targets of these expeditions varied. Merchant vessels carrying valuable cargoes were obvious objectives. Coastal settlements sometimes attracted attention as well. Certain raids focused upon specific economic goals such as obtaining supplies, securing ransom payments, or capturing strategic goods. Others emerged within broader military campaigns linked to imperial conflicts. The Caribbean rarely experienced clear distinctions between commerce and warfare. Economic activity and military strategy were deeply interconnected. For ordinary sailors serving aboard merchant ships, the threat posed by buccaneers was real. Captains implemented defensive measures. Convoys provided protection. Naval escorts accompanied especially valuable cargoes. Yet complete security remained impossible. The vastness of the Caribbean made constant surveillance impractical. Buccaneers exploited gaps within defensive systems. Their mobility allowed them to strike unexpectedly and disappear before effective responses could be organized. The psychological impact of this environment was profound. Fear traveled alongside goods and people throughout the region. Stories of successful raids spread rapidly. Accounts of captured ships circulated through ports. Even exaggerated rumors influenced behavior. Merchants adjusted routes. Governors strengthened defenses. Sailors remained alert for signs of danger. Tortuga's reputation benefited from this atmosphere. Every successful expedition enhanced the island's image as a place capable of challenging established powers. As morning sunlight brightens the sea and merchant vessels continue their journeys across dangerous waters, the significance of Tortuga becomes increasingly apparent. The island serves not merely as a settlement, but as a strategic node within a larger system of conflict and commerce. Its residents understand that the Caribbean's wealth creates opportunities unavailable elsewhere. By combining local knowledge, maritime skill, and frontier independence, they position themselves at the center of events shaping the region. The most dangerous waters in the world are not dangerous because of storms alone. They are dangerous because human ambition, imperial rivalry, and economic opportunity intersect there. Tortuga's buccaneers thrive within this environment. They understand its risks. More importantly, they understand its possibilities. The Caribbean has become their arena, and the raids launched from Tortuga are transforming both the island and the wider world around it. Imagine approaching the Caribbean from Europe aboard a heavily laden merchant vessel. The voyage has already lasted weeks. Cargo fills the hold. Investors back home expect profits. The crew dreams of reaching port safely. Yet the most dangerous portion of the journey may still lie ahead. As ships enter Caribbean waters, they encounter a region where control is fragmented. Different islands belong to different empires. Alliances shift. Wars begin and end. Local circumstances often matter more than official treaties signed across the ocean. A captain must remain aware not only of weather and navigation, but also of politics. Yesterday's ally may become tomorrow's enemy. A harbor considered safe last month may now be hostile. This uncertainty benefits the buccaneers of Tortuga. Their strength lies partly in their ability to adapt. Unlike large naval institutions constrained by bureaucracy, buccaneer crews operate with flexibility. They can change plans quickly. They respond to new intelligence. They exploit opportunities as they arise. Frontier life has taught them to survive within unpredictable environments, and maritime warfare rewards exactly these qualities. Many of the most famous Caribbean expeditions involve cooperation among multiple crews. Captains form temporary alliances to increase their strength. Ships sail together toward shared objectives. Success depends upon trust, negotiation, and mutual interest. These partnerships reflect broader patterns within buccaneer society. Formal authority remains limited, but practical cooperation flourishes when beneficial. The result is a maritime culture capable of organizing surprisingly complex operations despite lacking centralized structures. The scale of certain raids astonishes contemporaries. Buccaneers sometimes target fortified settlements rather than isolated vessels. Such undertakings require careful planning, substantial manpower, and detailed knowledge of local conditions. Intelligence gathered through trade networks becomes invaluable. Guides familiar with coastlines and defenses provide additional advantages. These operations blur distinctions between military campaigns and criminal enterprises. Participants may view themselves as soldiers serving broader political causes, entrepreneurs pursuing profit, or simply adventurers seeking opportunity. Motivations vary from individual to individual. European governments frequently encourage this ambiguity when convenient. During wartime, privateers weaken enemy economies while supplementing limited naval resources. Colonial officials may celebrate successful raids and share in resulting profits. Yet the same individuals can become liabilities when political circumstances change. A captain praised as a patriot during one conflict may later be condemned as a pirate during peacetime. Such reversals contribute to the instability characterizing Caribbean maritime life. Tortuga prospers because it occupies a strategic position within this system. Captured goods flow through its markets. Ship repair facilities remain busy. Merchants profit from increased activity. Taverns fill with sailors spending earnings from successful voyages. Wealth attracts additional settlers and entrepreneurs. The island's economy becomes increasingly tied to maritime conflict. Every expedition that returns successfully reinforces Tortuga's importance as a regional center. Yet prosperity comes with dangers. Successful raids provoke retaliation. Merchant interests demand protection. Colonial authorities seek greater control. Naval patrols increase in certain areas. Rival groups compete for access to lucrative opportunities. The Caribbean becomes an arms race of sorts, with defensive measures prompting new offensive strategies. Buccaneers respond by improving tactics, gathering better intelligence, and exploiting less predictable routes. Adaptation remains essential. The experiences of ordinary sailors reveal another side of this history. Life at sea is physically demanding regardless of occupation. Ships require constant maintenance. Storms threaten without warning. Food quality deteriorates during long voyages. Disease spreads easily within crowded conditions. Buccaneers face these same challenges. Their successes often obscure the hardships underlying maritime life. Many expeditions yield little profit. Injuries occur frequently. Not every voyage ends successfully. The risks are substantial, which helps explain why rewards can be so attractive. Stories emerging from Tortuga spread throughout the Atlantic world. Some emphasize daring escapes and dramatic victories. Others focus upon hidden coves, buried treasure, and fearless captains. Reality is often more complex than legend. Most buccaneers spend far more time preparing, waiting, sailing, and negotiating than engaging in spectacular battles. Yet myths possess power. They attract newcomers. They shape public perceptions. They transform historical events into enduring cultural narratives. As afternoon begins transitioning toward evening, the Caribbean remains alive with movement. Merchant vessels continue their journeys. Naval patrols search for threats. Privateers pursue opportunities. Information flows between ports. The sea itself becomes a stage upon which competing ambitions play out. Tortuga's residents understand this world intimately because they helped create it. Their island functions as both refuge and stronghold, connected to networks stretching across oceans. The most dangerous waters in the world are dangerous not solely because violence occurs there. They are dangerous because so many interests converge within them. Wealth, power, survival, and reputation all depend upon decisions made at sea. Every voyage carries uncertainty. Every encounter holds potential consequences. For the Buccaneers of Tortuga, this uncertainty is not merely a challenge. It is the foundation of their way of life. As the sun begins its descent and long shadows spread across the harbor, ships return from distant waters carrying stories, cargoes, and ambitions. Tortuga grows stronger with each successful expedition. Its reputation spreads farther. The pirate stronghold is reaching the height of its influence. Yet even as prosperity increases, forces are gathering that will eventually challenge its dominance. For now, however, the island remains the beating heart of Caribbean maritime adventure, and the dangerous waters surrounding it continue shaping the legends that will endure for centuries. Part 6. Daily Life on Tortuga. Taverns, Markets, Ships, and Survival. As the golden light of late afternoon spreads across Tortuga's harbor and the sea reflects shades of amber and blue, it becomes possible to look beyond the famous raids and maritime conflicts that made the island legendary. History often remembers dramatic events. Battles, treasure fleets, and notorious captains capture attention. Yet most people who lived on Tortuga spent far more time engaged in ordinary activities than extraordinary adventures. Ships had to be repaired. Food had to be acquired. Markets needed supplies. Homes required maintenance. Communities depended upon countless daily tasks that rarely appeared in the stories carried across the Atlantic world. To understand Tortuga at the height of its power, we must step away from the image of the pirate stronghold as a place of constant action and instead explore the realities of everyday life. Beneath the legends existed a functioning society shaped by work, trade, uncertainty, and survival. The harbor, the marketplace, the tavern, and the simple homes scattered across the island all played vital roles in sustaining the community that made Tortuga famous. Imagine arriving at the harbor shortly after sunrise. The waterfront is already active. Small boats move between anchored ships and the shore. Sailors unload barrels, crates, ropes, and supplies. Merchants inspect incoming goods. Craftsmen prepare for another day of labor. The sounds of conversation blend with the creaking of wooden hulls and the rhythmic movement of waves against docks. Tortuga's harbor serves as the island's economic heart. Every ship entering or leaving contributes to the flow of people, information, and resources. Without the harbor, the island's influence would vanish. With it, Tortuga remains connected to a vast network extending across the Caribbean and beyond. The population of the island is remarkably diverse. French settlers remain influential, but they are joined by people from many different backgrounds. English sailors, Dutch traders, former indentured servants, hunters, craftsmen, laborers, and adventurers all contribute to daily life. Some arrived seeking fortune. Others came seeking refuge. A few found themselves on the island through circumstances they never anticipated. What unites them is not nationality, but participation in a frontier society where adaptability often determines success. Food occupies a central place in everyday concerns. Life on Tortuga requires reliable access to provisions despite limited agricultural resources. Hunters continue supplying meat from nearby regions. Fishermen bring catches from surrounding waters. Small gardens provide fruits and vegetables where conditions permit. Ships arriving from other islands contribute additional supplies. Meals are often simple but practical, designed to sustain people engaged in physically demanding work. Preserving food remains important because voyages at sea require provisions capable of lasting for extended periods. The skills first developed by early buccaneers during their hunting years continue influencing the island's economy. Markets provide opportunities for exchange. Walking through one of Tortuga's marketplaces reveals a world of movement and negotiation. Traders display imported goods acquired through legitimate commerce, informal exchanges, or captured cargoes. Tools, weapons, fabrics, spices, tobacco, and countless other items change hands. Prices fluctuate according to availability and demand. Information is exchanged alongside merchandise. News from distant ports often proves as valuable as physical goods. Merchants learn about shipping activity, political developments, and economic conditions through conversations occurring between transactions. The taverns of Tortuga occupy a special place within popular imagination, and with good reason. They function as more than places for drinking and recreation. Taverns serve as centers of communication, recruitment, and social interaction. Captains seek crew members. Traders gather intelligence. Sailors share experiences from recent voyages. Deals are negotiated over meals and drinks. Stories circulate rapidly, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Some tales describe genuine events. Others blend truth with exaggeration. Together they contribute to the mythology surrounding the island. Yet taverns also reflect the challenges of frontier life. Long periods at sea create demand for relaxation and companionship. Sailors returning from dangerous voyages seek temporary escape from uncertainty. The atmosphere can be lively, but tensions sometimes emerge. Disputes over money, reputation, or personal disagreements occasionally lead to conflict. Maintaining order proves difficult in a community where many residents value independence and possess experience with violence. Nevertheless, social spaces remain essential because they help bind the community together. Ships themselves require constant attention. Wooden vessels operating in tropical environments deteriorate quickly. Saltwater, storms, insects, and ordinary wear create ongoing maintenance needs. Shipwrights, carpenters, sailmakers, and other skilled craftsmen play crucial roles in sustaining Tortuga's maritime economy. A successful expedition depends upon reliable vessels. Repairs consume time, labor, and resources. The harbor therefore contains not only sailors, but also specialists whose expertise keeps ships seaworthy. Housing varies considerably across the island. Some residents occupy relatively permanent structures built from local materials. Others live in simpler accommodations reflecting transient lifestyles. Wealthier individuals may enjoy greater comfort, but even successful captains often experience conditions far less luxurious than later legends suggest. Tortuga remains a frontier settlement. Practicality takes precedence over elegance. Buildings are designed to withstand tropical weather while providing basic shelter rather than impressive displays of status. Health presents another constant concern. Medical knowledge remains limited by modern standards. Injuries sustained during work or maritime ventures can become serious. Tropical diseases affect residents and visitors alike. Access to trained medical practitioners is inconsistent. Communities rely upon a combination of experience, traditional remedies, and whatever professional assistance is available. Survival often depends as much upon luck as treatment. These realities remind us that life on Tortuga, despite its reputation for opportunity, involves significant risks. As afternoon light softens and shadows lengthen across the harbor, daily routines continue. Craftsmen finish repairs. Merchants conclude negotiations. Sailors prepare vessels for departure or arrival. Families gather for evening meals. Children play near homes and waterfronts. The island feels less like a legend and more like a living community. Its residents navigate ordinary challenges while participating in extraordinary historical circumstances. Tortuga's strength derives not solely from famous captains or successful raids, but from the countless individuals whose labor sustains the settlement day after day. The pirate stronghold celebrated in stories depends upon practical realities. Markets, taverns, workshops, docks, and homes form the foundation supporting everything else. Understanding these elements reveals a more complete picture of Tortuga. It is not merely a place of adventure. It is a society shaped by work, adaptation, and survival. Beneath the legends, people live their lives much as communities everywhere have always done, seeking security, opportunity, and connection within an uncertain world. As evening settles over Tortuga and lanterns begin glowing along the waterfront, the island reveals another side of itself. During daylight hours, the harbor and markets dominate attention. At night, social life emerges more visibly. Conversations continue in taverns. Sailors gather around tables discussing recent voyages. Music drifts through open doorways. Merchants review accounts. Captains plan future expeditions. The settlement remains active long after sunset because maritime communities often operate according to rhythms different from those of agricultural societies. Ships arrive at unpredictable times. Opportunities appear without warning. Information must be shared quickly. Tortuga thrives because its residents remain adaptable to these realities. Imagine walking through the settlement after dark. The air remains warm despite the fading sunlight. The smell of cooking fires mixes with scents carried from the harbor. Groups of sailors exchange stories beneath lantern light. Some accounts describe storms survived at sea. Others recount encounters with merchant ships, distant ports, or unfamiliar coastlines. Storytelling serves important functions beyond entertainment. It preserves knowledge, strengthens social bonds, and contributes to collective identity. Through stories, newcomers learn local customs. Veterans share experience. Legends grow. The reputation of Tortuga owes much to these informal networks of communication. Sailors arriving from other regions hear tales about successful expeditions and carry them onward when they depart. News spreads rapidly across maritime routes. A single dramatic event can become known throughout the Caribbean within weeks. The island's image as a place of freedom, danger, and opportunity is reinforced continuously through such exchanges. Reputation becomes one of Tortuga's most valuable assets, attracting people eager to participate in its unique culture. Economic activity does not cease after sunset. Negotiations often continue into the evening. Merchants and captains discuss cargoes, supplies, and future ventures. Information regarding shipping routes remains highly valuable. Accurate intelligence can influence the success of an expedition. As a result, conversations occurring in taverns and private gatherings frequently possess practical significance. Social interaction and business are closely intertwined. Relationships built through repeated encounters create trust, and trust facilitates cooperation within a frontier environment. The island's diverse population contributes to a vibrant cultural atmosphere. Different languages can be heard along the waterfront. Customs from various regions blend together. Food, music, clothing, and social practices reflect multiple influences. Tortuga does not belong exclusively to any single national tradition. Instead, it develops a distinct identity shaped by interaction among people from many backgrounds. This diversity strengthens the island's adaptability while also creating occasional tensions. Managing differences requires negotiation and compromise, skills essential within frontier societies. Family life exists alongside the more famous aspects of maritime culture. Although popular images often emphasize male adventurers and sailors, women and children are also part of the community. Families establish households, maintain social networks, and contribute to local economies. Some operate businesses. Others provide services supporting maritime activities. Their presence helps transform Tortuga from a temporary encampment into a more stable settlement. Daily life extends beyond ships and raids. It includes ordinary concerns regarding food, shelter, education, relationships, and community. Religion occupies a varied role. Formal institutions are less prominent than in larger colonial centers, yet spiritual practices remain important for many residents. Sailors frequently live with uncertainty. Storms, disease, and violence create awareness of mortality. Religious observances, personal beliefs, and cultural traditions provide comfort and meaning. The island's diversity encourages a range of practices rather than strict uniformity. Frontier conditions often produce flexibility regarding matters that might generate greater conflict elsewhere. The environment continues shaping behavior. Hurricanes remain among the greatest threats facing the settlement. Residents understand that a powerful storm can destroy buildings, damage ships, and disrupt economic activity within hours. Preparations become part of life. Structures are reinforced where possible. Supplies are secured. Experience teaches communities how to respond, though nature cannot always be controlled. These periodic challenges remind residents of their vulnerability despite growing prosperity. Security remains another concern. Tortuga's reputation attracts both opportunity seekers and less welcome visitors. Disputes occur. Theft happens. Rival groups sometimes compete for influence. The absence of strong, centralized authority requires communities to develop alternative methods of maintaining order. Reputation, alliances, and mutual interests help regulate behavior. While violence is not constant, the possibility always exists. Residents learn to navigate these realities much as they navigate the uncertainties of maritime life. Perhaps the most striking aspect of daily life on Tortuga is the coexistence of ordinary routines and extraordinary possibilities. A sailor repairing a sail today may join a major expedition tomorrow. A trader negotiating prices in the marketplace may soon finance a voyage. News arriving from distant ports can alter local fortunes overnight. The settlement operates within a world of rapid change. Flexibility and readiness become valuable qualities because opportunities emerge unexpectedly. As night deepens and the harbor quiets slightly, ships rest at anchor beneath a sky filled with stars. Crews prepare for future journeys. Families settle into homes. Merchants secure goods for the evening. The island appears peaceful, yet beneath the surface lies constant movement. Information flows. Plans develop. Ambitions grow. Tortuga's society is dynamic because it exists at the intersection of commerce, conflict, and exploration. Looking across the harbor under moonlight, one can understand why the island became so famous. Its significance extends beyond piracy alone. Tortuga represents a frontier world where people from diverse backgrounds created a community adapted to uncertainty. Markets, taverns, workshops, ships, and households all contribute to that achievement. The daily lives of ordinary residents sustain the extraordinary reputation celebrated in later centuries. Yet even as Tortuga reaches the height of its influence, change is approaching. Empires are becoming stronger. Governments are growing less tolerant of independent maritime communities. The very success that made Tortuga prosperous is attracting increased attention from powerful enemies. For now, however, the island remains vibrant and resilient, a place where survival, opportunity, and adventure coexist beneath the warm Caribbean night. Its golden age continues, but the forces that will eventually challenge its dominance are already beginning to gather beyond the horizon. Part 7. Daily Life on Tortuga, Taverns, Markets, Ships, and Survival. As the golden light of late afternoon spreads across Tortuga's harbor and the sea reflects shades of amber and blue, It becomes possible to look beyond the famous raids and maritime conflicts that made the island legendary. History often remembers dramatic events. Battles, treasure fleets, and notorious captains capture attention. Yet most people who lived on Tortuga spent far more time engaged in ordinary activities than extraordinary adventures. Ships had to be repaired. Food had to be acquired. Markets needed supplies. Homes required maintenance. Communities depended upon countless daily tasks that rarely appeared in the stories carried across the Atlantic world. To understand Tortuga at the height of its power, we must step away from the image of the pirate stronghold as a place of constant action and instead explore the realities of everyday life. Beneath the legends existed a functioning society shaped by work, trade, uncertainty, and survival. The harbor, the marketplace, the tavern, and the simple homes scattered across the island all played vital roles in sustaining the community that made Tortuga famous. Imagine arriving at the harbor shortly after sunrise. The waterfront is already active. Small boats move between anchored ships and the shore. Sailors unload barrels, crates, ropes, and supplies. Merchants inspect incoming goods. Craftsmen prepare for another day of labor. The sounds of conversation blend with the creaking of wooden hulls and the rhythmic movement of waves against docks. Tortuga's harbor serves as the island's economic heart. Every ship entering or leaving contributes to the flow of people, information, and resources. Without the harbor, the island's influence would vanish. With it, Tortuga remains connected to a vast network extending across the Caribbean and beyond. The population of the island is remarkably diverse. French settlers remain influential, but they are joined by people from many different backgrounds. English sailors, Dutch traders, former indentured servants, hunters, craftsmen, laborers, and adventurers all contribute to daily life. Some arrived seeking fortune. Others came seeking refuge. A few found themselves on the island through circumstances they never anticipated. What unites them is not nationality, but participation in a frontier society where adaptability often determines success. Food occupies a central place in everyday concerns. Life on Tortuga requires reliable access to provisions despite limited agricultural resources. Hunters continue supplying meat from nearby regions. Fishermen bring catches from surrounding waters. Small gardens provide fruits and vegetables where conditions permit. Ships arriving from other islands contribute additional supplies. Meals are often simple but practical, designed to sustain people engaged in physically demanding work. Preserving food remains important because voyages at sea require provisions capable of lasting for extended periods. The skills first developed by early buccaneers during their hunting years continue influencing the island's economy. Markets provide opportunities for exchange. Walking through one of Tortuga's marketplaces reveals a world of movement and negotiation. Traders display imported goods acquired through legitimate commerce, informal exchanges, or captured cargoes. Tools, weapons, fabrics, spices, tobacco, and countless other items change hands. Prices fluctuate according to availability and demand. Information is exchanged alongside merchandise. News from distant ports often proves as valuable as physical goods. Merchants learn about shipping activity, political developments, and economic conditions through conversations occurring between transactions. The taverns of Tortuga occupy a special place within popular imagination, and with good reason. They function as more than places for drinking and recreation. Taverns serve as centers of communication, recruitment, and social interaction. Captains seek crew members. Traders gather intelligence. Sailors share experiences from recent voyages. Deals are negotiated over meals and drinks. Stories circulate rapidly, growing more dramatic with each retelling. Some tales describe genuine events. Others blend truth with exaggeration. Together they contribute to the mythology surrounding the island. Yet taverns also reflect the challenges of frontier life. Long periods at sea create demand for relaxation and companionship. Sailors returning from dangerous voyages seek temporary escape from uncertainty. The atmosphere can be lively, but tensions sometimes emerge. Disputes over money, reputation, or personal disagreements occasionally lead to conflict. Maintaining order proves difficult in a community where many residents value independence and possess experience with violence. Nevertheless, social spaces remain essential because they help bind the community together. Ships themselves require constant attention. Wooden vessels operating in tropical environments deteriorate quickly. Saltwater, storms, insects, and ordinary wear create ongoing maintenance needs. Shipwrights, carpenters, sailmakers, and other skilled craftsmen play crucial roles in sustaining Tortuga's maritime economy. A successful expedition depends upon reliable vessels. Repairs consume time, labor, and resources. The harbor therefore contains not only sailors, but also specialists whose expertise keeps ships seaworthy. Housing varies considerably across the island. Some residents occupy relatively permanent structures built from local materials. Others live in simpler accommodations reflecting transient lifestyles. Wealthier individuals may enjoy greater comfort, but even successful captains often experience conditions far less luxurious than later legends suggest. Tortuga remains a frontier settlement. Practicality takes precedence over elegance. Buildings are designed to withstand tropical weather while providing basic shelter rather than impressive displays of status. Health presents another constant concern. Medical knowledge remains limited by modern standards. Injuries sustained during work or maritime ventures can become serious. Tropical diseases affect residents and visitors alike. Access to trained medical practitioners is inconsistent. Communities rely upon a combination of experience, traditional remedies, and whatever professional assistance is available. Survival often depends as much upon luck as treatment. These realities remind us that life on Tortuga, despite its reputation for opportunity, involves significant risks. As afternoon light softens and shadows lengthen across the harbor, daily routines continue. Craftsmen finish repairs. Merchants conclude negotiations. Sailors prepare vessels for departure or arrival. Families gather for evening meals. Children play near homes and waterfronts. The island feels less like a legend and more like a living community. Its residents navigate ordinary challenges while participating in extraordinary historical circumstances. Tortuga's strength derives not solely from famous captains or successful raids, but from the countless individuals whose labor sustains the settlement day after day. The pirate stronghold celebrated in stories depends upon practical realities. Markets, taverns, workshops, docks, and homes form the foundation supporting everything else. Understanding these elements reveals a more complete picture of Tortuga. It is not merely a place of adventure. It is a society shaped by work, adaptation, and survival. Beneath the legends, people live their lives much as communities everywhere have always done, seeking security, opportunity, and connection within an uncertain world. As evening settles over Tortuga and lanterns begin glowing along the waterfront, the island reveals another side of itself. During daylight hours, the harbor and markets dominate attention. At night, social life emerges more visibly. Conversations continue in taverns. Sailors gather around tables discussing recent voyages. Music drifts through open doorways. Merchants review accounts. Captains plan future expeditions. The settlement remains active long after sunset because maritime communities often operate according to rhythms different from those of agricultural societies. Ships arrive at unpredictable times. Opportunities appear without warning. Information must be shared quickly. Tortuga thrives because its residents remain adaptable to these realities. Imagine walking through the settlement after dark. The air remains warm despite the fading sunlight. The smell of cooking fires mixes with scents carried from the harbor. Groups of sailors exchange stories beneath lantern light. Some accounts describe storms survived at sea. Others recount encounters with merchant ships, distant ports, or unfamiliar coastlines. Storytelling serves important functions beyond entertainment. It preserves knowledge, strengthens social bonds, and contributes to collective identity. Through stories, newcomers learn local customs. Veterans share experience. Legends grow. The reputation of Tortuga owes much to these informal networks of communication. Sailors arriving from other regions hear tales about successful expeditions and carry them onward when they depart. News spreads rapidly across maritime routes. A single dramatic event can become known throughout the Caribbean within weeks. The island's image as a place of freedom, danger, and opportunity is reinforced continuously through such exchanges. Reputation becomes one of Tortuga's most valuable assets, attracting people eager to participate in its unique culture. Economic activity does not cease after sunset. Negotiations often continue into the evening. Merchants and captains discuss cargoes, supplies, and future ventures. Information regarding shipping routes remains highly valuable. Accurate intelligence can influence the success of an expedition. As a result, conversations occurring in taverns and private gatherings frequently possess practical significance. Social interaction and business are closely intertwined. Relationships built through repeated encounters create trust, and trust facilitates cooperation within a frontier environment. The island's diverse population contributes to a vibrant cultural atmosphere. Different languages can be heard along the waterfront. Customs from various regions blend together. Food, music, clothing, and social practices reflect multiple influences. Tortuga does not belong exclusively to any single national tradition. Instead, it develops a distinct identity shaped by interaction among people from many backgrounds. This diversity strengthens the island's adaptability while also creating occasional tensions. Managing differences requires negotiation and compromise, skills essential within frontier societies. Family life exists alongside the more famous aspects of maritime culture. Although popular images often emphasize male adventurers and sailors, women and children are also part of the community. Families establish households, maintain social networks, and contribute to local economies. Some operate businesses. Others provide services supporting maritime activities. Their presence helps transform Tortuga from a temporary encampment into a more stable settlement. Daily life extends beyond ships and raids. It includes ordinary concerns regarding food, shelter, education, relationships, and community. Religion occupies a varied role. Formal institutions are less prominent than in larger colonial centers, yet spiritual practices remain important for many residents. Sailors frequently live with uncertainty. Storms, disease, and violence create awareness of mortality. Religious observances, personal beliefs, and cultural traditions provide comfort and meaning. The island's diversity encourages a range of practices rather than strict uniformity. Frontier conditions often produce flexibility regarding matters that might generate greater conflict elsewhere. The environment continues shaping behavior. Hurricanes remain among the greatest threats facing the settlement. Residents understand that a powerful storm can destroy buildings, damage ships, and disrupt economic activity within hours. Preparations become part of life. Structures are reinforced where possible. Supplies are secured. Experience teaches communities how to respond, though nature cannot always be controlled. These periodic challenges remind residents of their vulnerability despite growing prosperity. Security remains another concern. Tortuga's reputation attracts both opportunity seekers and less welcome visitors. Disputes occur. Theft happens. Rival groups sometimes compete for influence. The absence of strong, centralized authority requires communities to develop alternative methods of maintaining order. Reputation, alliances, and mutual interests help regulate behavior. While violence is not constant, the possibility always exists. Residents learn to navigate these realities much as they navigate the uncertainties of maritime life. Perhaps the most striking aspect of daily life on Tortuga is the coexistence of ordinary routines and extraordinary possibilities. A sailor repairing a sail today may join a major expedition tomorrow. A trader negotiating prices in the marketplace may soon finance a voyage. News arriving from distant ports can alter local fortunes overnight. The settlement operates within a world of rapid change. Flexibility and readiness become valuable qualities because opportunities emerge unexpectedly. As night deepens and the harbor quiets slightly, ships rest at anchor beneath a sky filled with stars. Crews prepare for future journeys. Families settle into homes. Merchants secure goods for the evening. The island appears peaceful, yet beneath the surface lies constant movement. Information flows. Plans develop. Ambitions grow. Tortuga's society is dynamic because it exists at the intersection of commerce, conflict, and exploration. Looking across the harbor under moonlight, one can understand why the island became so famous. Its significance extends beyond piracy alone. Tortuga represents a frontier world where people from diverse backgrounds created a community adapted to uncertainty. Markets, taverns, workshops, ships, and households all contribute to that achievement. The daily lives of ordinary residents sustain the extraordinary reputation celebrated in later centuries. Yet even as Tortuga reaches the height of its influence, change is approaching. Empires are becoming stronger. Governments are growing less tolerant of independent maritime communities. The very success that made Tortuga prosperous is attracting increased attention from powerful enemies. For now, however, the island remains vibrant and resilient, a place where survival, opportunity, and adventure coexist beneath the warm Caribbean night. Its golden age continues, but the forces that will eventually challenge its dominance are already beginning to gather beyond the horizon. Part 8. The Decline of Tortuga, Pirates, Legends, and Myths. As the sun rises over Tortuga and illuminates the island's rugged hillsides with soft golden light, it becomes increasingly difficult to separate history from legend. During its years as a frontier refuge and maritime stronghold, Tortuga was a real place inhabited by real people confronting the practical challenges of survival, trade, warfare, and colonial expansion. Yet as the Buccaneer era gradually faded, something unexpected began to occur. The island's reality slowly gave way to its mythology. Stories spread farther than ships. Tales traveled beyond the Caribbean and reached Europe, where readers fascinated by adventure eagerly consumed accounts of daring captains, hidden coves, and dramatic raids. Over time, Tortuga ceased to exist solely as a geographical location. It became an idea, a symbol of freedom, danger, rebellion, and opportunity. Ironically, The decline of the pirate stronghold helped ensure the survival of its legend. As the real Tortuga became less important within the changing Caribbean, the imagined Tortuga grew more powerful than ever. Imagine visiting the island during the years following the peak of Buccaneer influence. The harbor remains active, but it no longer dominates regional affairs as it once did. Ships still arrive and depart, though many now participate in more conventional forms of commerce. Colonial administration grows increasingly visible. Settlements appear more stable. The atmosphere of constant improvisation characteristic of earlier decades begins fading. To an observer familiar with Tortuga's golden age, the changes would be unmistakable. Yet newcomers arriving from distant ports might perceive something entirely different. They would arrive carrying stories shaped by rumor, exaggeration, and popular imagination. Expectations often exceeded reality. The process by which legends emerge is fascinating. Historical events rarely survive unchanged as they pass from person to person. Details are emphasized, altered, or omitted. Successful raids become more dramatic. Dangerous voyages become more heroic. Unusual individuals acquire larger-than-life qualities. Tortuga provides ideal material for such transformations because its history already contains elements appealing to storytellers. The island had served as a refuge for independent spirits. Its residents had challenged powerful empires. Wealth, risk, and adventure had played central roles in daily life. Even without embellishment, these experiences possessed narrative power. Sailors contribute significantly to the spread of stories. Maritime communities depend heavily upon oral communication. News, warnings, and entertainment all travel through conversation. A sailor returning from the Caribbean might recount experiences in taverns located thousands of miles away. Listeners unfamiliar with the region often imagine settings more exotic and events more extraordinary than reality would support. Repetition amplifies these tendencies. Stories become polished through retelling. Certain details grow increasingly vivid while others disappear entirely. Within a surprisingly short time, historical events can acquire mythological dimensions. Printed accounts accelerate this process. During the late 17th and early 18th centuries, books describing pirates, privateers, and maritime adventures find enthusiastic audiences. Readers fascinated by distant places eagerly consume tales from the Caribbean. Some authors rely upon first-hand observations. Others combine factual information with rumor and speculation. Accuracy varies considerably, but popularity remains strong. Tortuga frequently appears within these narratives because its reputation is already well established. The island becomes associated with an entire way of life rather than merely a specific location. Many of the most enduring pirate stereotypes originate during this period of myth-making. Images of fearless captains, hidden treasure, secret maps, and lawless tropical havens gain prominence. Although elements of truth exist within some stories, the overall picture often differs significantly from historical reality. Real buccaneers spent much of their time engaged in ordinary activities such as repairing ships, obtaining supplies, negotiating agreements, and waiting for opportunities. Life was frequently difficult, uncomfortable, and dangerous. Yet popular imagination prefers dramatic moments over routine experiences. The result is a version of Tortuga shaped more by storytelling than daily life. The island's physical geography contributes to its legendary status. Rugged coastlines, sheltered coves, and tropical landscapes provide evocative settings for adventure narratives. To readers who have never visited the Caribbean, Tortuga appears almost mythical. Its very name evokes images of distant horizons and hidden possibilities. Geography and imagination reinforce one another, transforming a real island into a symbol recognizable far beyond its actual size or significance. Meanwhile, the Caribbean itself continues changing. Plantation economies expand. Colonial administrations strengthen. Trade networks become more structured. Opportunities for independent maritime adventurers decline. The world that produced the Buccaneers gradually disappears. Yet paradoxically, this disappearance makes the stories more appealing. People often romanticize eras perceived as ending or already lost. Tortuga becomes associated with freedom precisely because that freedom seems increasingly unattainable within more regulated societies. Former Buccaneers occasionally participate in this process themselves. Veterans share memories of earlier years. Some emphasize successes while minimizing hardships. Others genuinely recall events differently after the passage of time. Memory is selective. Nostalgia influences interpretation. The result is a growing body of stories blending fact and embellishment. Listeners rarely possess the information necessary to distinguish between them. As morning transitions into afternoon and sunlight sparkles across the harbor, Tortuga continues existing in two forms simultaneously. There is the real island, adapting to new economic and political realities. And there is the legendary island, expanding within popular imagination. The gap between these versions widens with each passing year. Visitors expecting a lawless pirate paradise may find an ordinary colonial settlement. Readers encountering dramatic tales may assume they describe everyday life rather than exceptional circumstances. Myth increasingly overshadows reality. Yet myths persist because they address deeper human interests. Tortuga represents independence in a world of authority. It symbolizes opportunity beyond conventional limits. It offers narratives of courage, risk, and adventure. Whether historically accurate or not, such themes resonate across generations. The decline of the pirate stronghold therefore marks not the end of its influence, but the beginning of a new phase. Tortuga is becoming immortal, not through continued power, but through the stories people choose to tell about it. As evening approaches and the Caribbean Sea reflects the warm colors of the setting sun, the legend of Tortuga continues growing even as the historical circumstances that created it fade further into the past. Across Europe and the Americas, the island's name becomes increasingly detached from specific events and increasingly connected to broader ideas about piracy, adventure, and rebellion. By the early 18th century, many people who speak of Tortuga know little about its actual history. Instead, they know the stories. Some of these stories contain fragments of truth. Others exist almost entirely within the realm of imagination. Together, they transform Tortuga from a former frontier settlement into one of the most enduring symbols in maritime folklore. Imagine a reader in a distant European city opening a book describing life in the Caribbean. The pages contain dramatic accounts of sea battles, hidden anchorages, daring escapes, and notorious captains. Tropical islands appear as mysterious worlds far removed from everyday experience. Among these locations, Tortuga occupies a special place. It is presented not merely as a settlement, but as the heart of piracy itself. Whether every detail is accurate becomes less important than the emotional impact of the narrative. Readers are drawn into a world of adventure and danger. Their understanding of Tortuga is shaped accordingly. This process reflects a broader pattern visible throughout history. Places associated with unusual events often acquire symbolic meanings extending beyond their original contexts. Ancient cities become linked to legends. Battlefields become associated with heroism. Frontier settlements become symbols of freedom. Tortuga follows a similar path. Its reputation grows because it embodies themes that capture imagination. The island represents resistance to authority, pursuit of opportunity, and life lived according to different rules. These themes remain compelling long after specific historical details fade from memory. The emerging mythology also simplifies complex realities. The real Caribbean of the 17th century was shaped by imperial competition, colonial expansion, trade networks, slavery, indigenous histories, environmental challenges, and countless other factors. Buccaneers occupied only one part of this larger picture. Yet myths often focus narrowly upon the most dramatic elements. As a result, the broader context receives less attention. Tortuga becomes known primarily for piracy, even though its history includes hunters, traders, settlers, families, craftsmen, and many others whose lives contributed to the island's development. Popular culture further strengthens these perceptions. Over time, plays, novels, illustrations, and later forms of entertainment draw inspiration from pirate stories. Authors and artists select details likely to appeal to audiences. Hidden treasure, secret coves, colorful characters, and dramatic confrontations prove especially popular. Tortuga appears repeatedly because it already possesses strong symbolic associations. Each new retelling adds layers to the legend. Historical accuracy becomes increasingly secondary to narrative effectiveness. Some myths involve buried treasure. Stories describe vast fortunes hidden in remote locations awaiting discovery. While wealth certainly changed hands during the Buccaneer era, evidence for many famous treasure tales is limited. Nevertheless, the idea persists because it appeals to universal fantasies regarding sudden fortune and hidden possibilities. Tortuga's rugged landscape provides an ideal backdrop for such stories. Cliffs, forests, and secluded bays seem capable of concealing secrets indefinitely. Other myths focus upon pirate democracy and equality. Historical buccaneer communities did develop certain practices encouraging participation and cooperation, particularly compared to some contemporary institutions. Yet these arrangements existed within harsh and often violent environments. Modern interpretations sometimes exaggerate positive aspects while overlooking complexities. The reality was neither entirely oppressive nor entirely egalitarian. Like most historical societies, it contained contradictions. Myth tends to simplify these nuances into more easily understood narratives. The image of Tortuga as a lawless paradise also deserves careful consideration. Freedom certainly attracted many residents. Frontier conditions allowed greater autonomy than existed in some colonial settings. Yet life on the island involved significant risks and responsibilities. Disease, storms, violence, economic uncertainty, and material hardship were constant concerns. Residents worked hard to survive. Romantic portrayals often overlook these realities because adventure stories rarely focus upon routine labor and practical challenges. As years pass, fewer individuals remain who personally remember Tortuga's golden age. First-hand experiences give way to second-hand accounts. Oral traditions evolve. Historical memories become intertwined with imagination. This transition is common in human societies. Once direct witnesses disappear, stories gain greater freedom to change. Tortuga's legend flourishes precisely because it is no longer constrained by widespread personal knowledge of events. Meanwhile, the island itself continues adapting to changing circumstances. Ordinary life persists. Residents pursue commerce, agriculture, and other activities. New generations grow up within a world different from that of the Buccaneers. The settlement remains real even as its symbolic counterpart expands globally. This coexistence between reality and myth is one of the most intriguing aspects of Tortuga's history. As evening deepens and stars appear above the Caribbean, the distinction between the two versions becomes increasingly apparent. The historical Tortuga was a specific place shaped by geography, economics, politics, and human choices. The legendary Tortuga exists within stories, books, and cultural memory. Both are important. The first explains what happened. The second explains why people continue caring about it centuries later. Looking across the quiet harbor, one might imagine echoes of the past lingering among the waves. Ships no longer depart on the same kinds of expeditions. Empires have changed. The world has moved on. Yet the stories remain remarkably resilient. They continue inspiring curiosity because they speak to enduring aspects of human nature: the desire for freedom, fascination with risk, attraction to adventure, and interest in lives lived beyond ordinary boundaries. The decline of Tortuga therefore marks not a disappearance, but a transformation. The pirate stronghold loses much of its practical significance, yet gains something else. It becomes part of global imagination. Long after the Buccaneers are gone, people will still speak its name. They will debate what was real and what was myth. They will revisit the stories and create new ones. And in doing so, they will ensure that Tortuga's legacy survives far beyond the age that first gave it life. Part 9. What remains today? Tortuga's lasting legacy. As the first light of dawn spreads across the Caribbean Sea and gentle waves roll against the shores of Tortuga, we arrive at the final stage of our journey. The great age of the Buccaneers has long since passed. The treasure fleets no longer dominate the Atlantic world. The privateers who once sailed under commissions granted by rival empires have disappeared into history. The taverns that echoed with stories of distant voyages have fallen silent. Yet Tortuga itself remains. More than 3 centuries after its most famous era, the island still rises from the sea north of Hispaniola, surrounded by the same warm waters and trade winds that shaped its history. Looking at it today, one might struggle to imagine that this relatively small Caribbean island once stood at the center of one of the most turbulent periods in maritime history. Time has altered the landscape, transformed societies, and replaced old institutions with new ones. Nevertheless, traces of the past endure. Some remain visible in the physical environment. Others survive in historical records, archaeological evidence, cultural memory, and enduring legends. To understand Tortuga's lasting legacy, we must explore not only what remains on the island itself, but also the broader impact it had upon the world. Imagine approaching modern Tortuga by sea. The dramatic coastline still commands attention. Steep hills rise above the water. Rocky cliffs overlook sheltered coves. Tropical vegetation covers much of the landscape. The geography that once attracted hunters, settlers, and maritime adventurers remains largely unchanged. Nature preserves many of the same features that made the island strategically valuable centuries ago. Looking across the coastline, it becomes easier to understand why people seeking refuge found the location appealing. The island still possesses an atmosphere of separation from larger centers of power. Even today, its rugged terrain conveys a sense of independence. Yet much has changed. The political and economic systems that shaped Tortuga during the 17th century no longer exist. Colonial empires have vanished. Plantation economies have evolved. Maritime technology has transformed transportation and trade. The Caribbean itself occupies a very different place within the global economy. Modern residents of the region live within societies shaped by centuries of change. The world that produced the Buccaneers is gone, preserved only through evidence and memory. Historical research, plays an essential role in reconstructing that lost world. Scholars examine archival documents, letters, government reports, shipping records, maps, and personal accounts to understand Tortuga's past. These sources reveal details often obscured by legend. They show how ordinary people lived, worked, traded, and navigated the challenges of frontier life. Historical investigation reminds us that behind every famous story stood real individuals making decisions within specific circumstances. The romantic image of piracy may attract attention, but the deeper history concerns communities adapting to a rapidly changing Atlantic world. Archaeology contributes another perspective. Excavations and surveys provide evidence unavailable through written records alone. Artifacts recovered from Caribbean sites reveal patterns of trade, daily life, and cultural interaction. Objects such as ceramics, tools, weapons, and household goods help researchers understand how people lived. Although the tropical environment presents challenges for preservation, archaeological discoveries continue expanding knowledge of the region's past. Each artifact serves as a connection to individuals whose voices rarely appear in official documents. One of the most significant aspects of Tortuga's legacy involves its role in illustrating broader historical processes. The island was never important solely because of piracy. Its history reflects larger themes including colonization, migration, trade, imperial rivalry, and frontier adaptation. People from diverse backgrounds converged on Tortuga because it offered opportunities unavailable elsewhere. Their experiences demonstrate how individuals respond to changing economic and political conditions. The island serves as a case study in the complex relationships between local communities and expanding empires. The story of Tortuga also highlights the importance of geography. Physical landscapes influence human behavior in powerful ways. The island's location near major shipping routes, combined with its natural defenses and relative isolation, shaped its development. Geography created opportunities that residents exploited creatively. Understanding these relationships helps explain why certain places become historically significant while others remain relatively obscure. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Tortuga's legacy lies in its influence on cultural imagination. Few islands of comparable size have achieved such widespread recognition. The name Tortuga appears in books, films, television programs, games, and countless other forms of popular culture. For many people, it represents the quintessential pirate haven. This symbolic role ensures that the island remains relevant long after the circumstances that produced its fame have disappeared. Even individuals unfamiliar with Caribbean history may recognize the name because of its association with adventure and maritime legend. Yet historical reality remains important. Myths can inspire curiosity, but understanding the past requires careful examination of evidence. The real Tortuga was neither a paradise nor a purely lawless wasteland. It was a community shaped by opportunities and constraints, successes and failures, cooperation and conflict. Its residents experienced ordinary concerns alongside extraordinary events. Appreciating this complexity enriches our understanding of both the island and the broader world in which it existed. As morning sunlight brightens the Caribbean and illuminates Tortuga's coastline, the island appears peaceful. The violence, uncertainty, and ambition that once defined its most famous era have faded into history. What remains is a landscape carrying memories of countless lives. Hunters, sailors, traders, settlers, craftsmen, families, and adventurers all contributed to the story. Their experiences helped create a legacy extending far beyond the island itself. The significance of Tortuga, therefore, cannot be measured solely by its role in pirate history. It endures because it captures something fundamental about human societies. It demonstrates how people adapt to frontier environments, challenge established systems, pursue opportunity, and create communities under uncertain conditions. These themes remain relevant regardless of time or place. Tortuga's story continues to resonate because it reflects enduring aspects of the human experience. As the day progresses and warm Caribbean sunlight reflects across calm waters surrounding Tortuga, our journey through the island's history approaches its conclusion. The centuries that separate us from the Buccaneer era may seem vast, yet the influence of that period remains surprisingly visible. Historical events often leave legacies extending far beyond their immediate consequences. Some legacies take physical form in landscapes, buildings, or artifacts. Others survive through stories, ideas, and cultural memory. Tortuga possesses both. Its enduring significance derives not only from what happened there, but also from how generations have chosen to remember and reinterpret those events. Imagine standing on a hillside overlooking the island today. The view encompasses sea, coastline, forests, and distant horizons. The scene appears tranquil, yet beneath this peaceful surface lies a history shaped by movement. For centuries, people crossed these waters in search of opportunity, security, wealth, or freedom. Indigenous communities navigated the Caribbean long before European arrival. Colonists established settlements. Hunters pursued resources. Traders connected distant regions. Buccaneers launched expeditions. Each group left traces contributing to the island's historical identity. Tortuga's legacy therefore belongs not to a single population, but to many different communities whose experiences intersected over time. Modern historians increasingly emphasize this broader perspective. Earlier accounts often focused narrowly on famous captains and dramatic raids. Contemporary research explores a wider range of subjects including social history, economic networks, environmental conditions, and cultural interactions. This approach reveals a richer and more nuanced picture of the island. The people who repaired ships, prepared food, maintained households, cultivated gardens, and supported maritime activities were just as important to Tortuga's functioning as the individuals whose names appeared in adventure stories. The island's history also provides valuable insights into the nature of frontier societies. Frontiers occupy unique positions within human history because they exist where established systems encounter uncertainty. Rules become more flexible, opportunities emerge, new communities form, yet frontiers are rarely stable. Over time, successful frontier regions are often incorporated into larger political and economic structures. Tortuga followed this pattern. Its period of greatest independence occurred precisely because surrounding institutions remained relatively weak. Once those institutions strengthened, the frontier environment changed. Understanding this process helps explain not only Tortuga's rise and decline, but also similar developments elsewhere in the world. The island's influence on popular culture remains extraordinary. Writers, filmmakers, artists, and game designers continue drawing inspiration from pirate history. Tortuga frequently appears as a setting because it symbolizes an entire world of maritime adventure. Audiences are fascinated by stories involving hidden coves, dangerous voyages, and independent spirits challenging powerful institutions. While these portrayals do not always reflect historical realities accurately, they keep interest in the past alive. Curiosity inspired by fiction often leads people toward deeper exploration of genuine history. Education benefits from this continued interest. Tortuga's story offers opportunities to discuss broader historical themes including colonization, trade, empire, migration, economics, and cultural exchange. The island serves as a gateway into understanding the interconnected Atlantic world of the 17th century. Through its history, we can examine how local events relate to global processes. Small places sometimes illuminate large patterns more effectively than major capitals because they reveal interactions occurring at multiple levels simultaneously. Looking across the Caribbean today, it becomes apparent that the sea remains a unifying force. Just as in the past, waters connect rather than separate communities. Trade routes have changed. Technologies have advanced. Political boundaries have shifted. Yet the fundamental importance of maritime connections endures. Tortuga's history reminds us that islands are rarely isolated. Their significance often derives from relationships extending far beyond their shores. As afternoon gradually transitions toward evening, the long arc of Tortuga's story comes into focus. A remote island became a frontier refuge. A refuge evolved into a maritime stronghold. A stronghold declined as empires expanded and priorities changed. The reality faded, but the legend endured. Few places experience such a transformation so completely. Even fewer continue capturing imagination centuries later. The lasting legacy of Tortuga ultimately rests upon its ability to bridge history and imagination. It was a real place inhabited by real people confronting practical challenges. At the same time, it became a symbol representing freedom, adventure, and life beyond conventional limits. Both dimensions matter. The historical island teaches us about the past. The legendary island reveals how people remember the past. Together, they form a story far richer than either could provide alone. As the sun begins sinking toward the horizon and golden light spreads across the sea, Tortuga appears once more as it has throughout our journey, a small island surrounded by vast waters. Yet within that modest landscape lies a remarkable history. Generations have come and gone. Ships have sailed and disappeared beyond distant horizons. Empires have risen and fallen. Still, the story remains. And perhaps that is Tortuga's greatest legacy. Not the treasure, not the battles, and not even the pirates themselves, but the enduring reminder that even the smallest places can leave echoes that travel across centuries. Long after the cannons fell silent and the sails vanished from the horizon, the island continued speaking through history, legend, and memory. Its age of piracy ended, but its place in the human imagination never truly disappeared. And so, our voyage through the history of Tortuga comes to an end. Tonight, we've traveled back to a Caribbean world shaped by exploration, rivalry, opportunity, and uncertainty. We've watched a small island rise from obscurity to become one of the most famous places in maritime history. We've explored the early days of Tortuga, when hunters and settlers carved out lives on a rugged frontier beyond the reach of powerful empires. We've witnessed the birth of the Buccaneers, followed their journeys across some of the most dangerous waters on Earth, and stepped into the bustling taverns, crowded harbors, and lively markets that made the island thrive. Along the way, we've seen how European powers struggled for control of the Caribbean, how privateers and pirates blurred the lines between war and commerce, and how Tortuga became a symbol of freedom, danger, and opportunity. We've also watched the island's fortunes change as empires grew stronger, trade became more organized, and the age of the Buccaneers slowly faded into history. Yet even as the real Tortuga changed, its legend only grew stronger. Today, the cannons are silent, the pirate ships are gone, and the bustling frontier harbor exists only in memory. But the stories remain. They continue to echo across centuries, reminding us that history is often shaped by unexpected places and extraordinary people. If you enjoyed this relaxing journey through the terrifying story of Tortuga and would like to explore more forgotten histories, lost civilizations, ancient mysteries, pirate legends, and fascinating chapters from the past, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating long-form history for sleep journeys designed to help you relax, unwind, and drift peacefully into the past. Thank you for spending part of your evening with me. Until our next voyage through history, may the seas remain calm, the winds gentle, and your dreams filled with distant horizons, tropical waters, and the echoes of stories long forgotten. Good night, and sleep well.